All right, settle in with me. If you can, go ahead and tap like and subscribe right now, before you get too cozy and your eyelids decide to do their own little disappearing act. That way you can fall asleep without forgetting. And if you ever want more of these boring little adventures, there's a whole playlist waiting for you. All my sleepy travels gathered up in one place. You can just press play and let your brain drift. Also, if you become a channel member, you're not only helping support the channel, you can also request a personalized sleepy story from me, which is, honestly, a very polite way to outsource bedtime to a time traveler. Now, I'm Clyde, and tonight, I'm in Edo-era Japan, and I'm sitting under a cherry tree. It's just not spring yet. I thought there would be blossoms. That's the funny thing. Not funny like a joke. More like the kind of funny where you realize you packed the wrong coat and now you have to pretend you meant to do that. I can't really blame myself. Cherry blossoms are one of those things your mind keeps in the same drawer as warm bread, and clean sheets, and the sound of rain that has no plans. You think about them and your shoulders drop a little. So when I arrived and saw the tree, I sat down like I was early for an appointment. Only the appointment wasn't happening yet. The branches above me are bare, not dead, not sad, just waiting. The bark is dark and textured beneath my fingertips, with little ridges that catch the light when I tilt my head. I'm tucked close to the trunk, where the wind is gentler and the ground under me is firm. Dry leaves, a few pebbles, a patch of soil that looks like it's been raked on purpose, the way gardens are kept tidy here, as if even the dirt is asked to behave. There's a faint smell of wood smoke somewhere nearby. Not sharp, just a soft thread of it, drifting through the air like someone lit a small fire and then forgot to brag about it. I can hear a city, but it's not the kind of city that shouts. It's a city that clears its throat politely. Footsteps. A wooden clack of sandals on packed earth. A low murmur of voices. Not too loud, as if everybody is sharing the same quiet secret. And somewhere, a bell. Not dramatic. Just a simple little sound, like time tapping me on the shoulder and then saying, "Never mind." I shift a little, pulling my cloak closer. The air has that winter edge to it, even though the sky has a soft color like diluted tea. A bird hops near my boot, bold as anything. It stops and looks at me like I'm the one who's out of place. I give it a slow blink. It hops twice, then decides I am not a threat, just a large, sleepy object. And it continues on like it has important bird errands, which, to be fair, it probably does. Not far away, a small dog trots past with a curled tail. It's the color of toasted rice. It pauses, sniffs the air, and looks at me with the calm confidence of an animal that has never worried about taxes. Then it keeps going. I watch it disappear down a path lined with low wooden fences and lanterns that haven't been lit yet. The lanterns are there anyway, like a promise. It's strange how often I end up waiting for bread, waiting for a train, waiting for soup, waiting for paint to dry, and now, waiting for blossoms. If you were expecting a grand romantic moment, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm mostly just trying to keep my feet warm. There's a tiny, silly part of my mind that thinks, maybe if I sit here long enough, the tree will feel pressured. Like it'll glance down at me and think, oh no, he's committed, I'd better hurry up. But the tree doesn't seem like the type to rush. It feels very Japanese, honestly. Patient, quiet, completely unbothered by my personal schedule. I sit anyway, because even without blossoms, it's a good tree. And there's something comforting about choosing a spot and staying put in a world where I don't always get to. A man passes by carrying a long bundle wrapped in cloth. He moves at a steady pace, not fast, not slow, like he's learned the art of arriving exactly when he means to. Behind him, a young boy follows, holding something in both hands. At first, I think it's a small box, but as he gets closer, I realize it's a little wooden cage. Inside, there's a cricket. The boy stops for a moment, fascinated by the way the cricket shifts and taps at the slats. He whispers something to it like they're negotiating terms. Then he notices me. His eyes widen slightly. Not frightened, just curious. He gives a small bow. I return it, slow and gentle. He smiles and continues, the cricket going along like a tiny passenger on a long trip. I watch them go, and I find myself thinking about how people traveled in this time, not just across Japan, but across their lives. In Edo-era Japan, travel isn't exactly casual. In a lot of places, you don't just decide to wander off because the sky looks nice. There are rules, permits, checkpoints, domains. The Tokugawa shogunate keeps a careful hand on things. Like a librarian who's very serious about returning books on time. There are highways, though, proper roads. The Tokaido, for example, a major route connecting Edo to Kyoto. People travel it like a slow-moving river. Merchants, pilgrims, messengers, and the occasional samurai whose posture suggests he's never spilled a drop of tea in his life. And yet, even with all those rules, people still move. They still go places. They still carry crickets in little cages like it's the most normal thing in the world. Not far off, I hear the sound of water. A narrow canal, maybe. The gentle lap of it against wood. A pole tapping as someone steadies a small boat. A woman walks by with a basket, and the basket smells like something warm. Sweet. Maybe roasted chestnuts or little rice cakes. My stomach takes that information and immediately files a complaint. I'm not starving, but I am the kind of hungry where you start thinking of food as a philosophy. I think about how Edo, the city, has grown into something enormous in this period. Hundreds of thousands of people, maybe more. It's crowded, busy, alive. But still, in moments like this, it can feel like a quiet village if you find the right pocket of space, which, apparently, is under a cherry tree that refuses to show off. I look up again. Bare branches. A few buds, maybe. Tiny, tight little knots that look like they're keeping secrets. I take a slow breath in. The air smells like damp earth and wood smoke and something faintly fishy, which makes sense. Fish is everywhere here. Markets, street stalls, cooking fires, salt and soy and sweet sauces. A cat appears, as if summoned by my thinking. It's a lean gray cat with pale eyes, and it steps into view with the unbothered authority of a creature that believes it owns the entire neighborhood. It sits about 6 feet away from me and begins washing one paw. It does not look at me, which is somehow more insulting than if it had stared. I glance around and notice, near the path, a small wooden sign posted on a stake. The writing is neat. Brush strokes. I can't read it perfectly. Not without squinting so hard I'd look like I'm doing math, but I can tell it's official. This time is full of official things. Official houses, official rules, official hairstyles that look like they require an instruction manual. And yet, right beside all that seriousness, there's also delight. A tiny candy store, a toy drum in the hands of a child, a paper charm hanging from a doorway, fluttering just a little as someone passes. I see a man selling something that looks like folded paper, maybe prints. Woodblock prints are popular in this period. Landscapes, actors, beauties, scenes from stories. People collect them, trade them, hang them up like windows to other places, which makes me smile because I am, in a way, a person who collects places too. I just do it the hard way. The cat finishes washing and finally flicks its gaze toward me, as if checking whether I've improved while it wasn't looking. I give it a slow nod. It blinks once and then looks away again, satisfied that I remain a harmless, human-shaped piece of scenery. I shift my weight and adjust the strap across my chest. The pocket watch rests against my tunic, heavy and familiar. I don't look at it. I'm trying not to be too time-aware right now. That's a trap. Instead, I focus on small things. A leaf stuck in the crook of a branch. A little puff of wind that makes the lanterns sway on their hooks. The sound of a broom somewhere, sweeping a path like someone is brushing the world into order. And my mind, naturally, wanders. I start thinking about the strange universality of waiting for a plant to do what it does on its own schedule. You can't argue a tree into blooming. You can't reason with it. You can't give it a motivational speech. I mean, you can. But you'll look silly, and the tree will win. I once knew a man who tried to hurry bread. Not the baking, the rising. He thought if he stared at the dough long enough, it would get nervous and inflate faster. It did not. It sat there, calm as anything. And then, when it was ready, it rose. Which is exactly what this cherry tree is doing. I let my shoulders relax. If you're listening and you feel your thoughts buzzing, like little bees, it's all right. You don't have to chase them. Just let them drift past, the way these people drift past me. And let the tree do what it's going to do. The cat stands and stretches, arches its back like it's showing off to an invisible audience, and then pads away. A pair of men pass carrying something odd between them. It looks like a long wooden frame with a bundle of reeds strapped to it. Maybe materials for roof repair, or a display stand, or, in the most exciting version of my imagination, a very polite portable stage for an extremely small play. I do not get a play, I get roof repair, which is on brand. I sit beneath my stubborn tree and watch Edo continue quietly around me. And I decide, gently, that even without blossoms, this is enough. This is still one of those moments where nothing much happens, and that makes it perfect. And for a little while, I just stay. After a while, I realize the city has a rhythm, not a beat you can clap to, more like breathing, in and out. Footsteps gather, then thin. Voices rise, then soften again. I lean my shoulder a little more comfortably against the tree. The bark presses through my cloak, solid and reassuring. If trees had opinions, this one feels like the kind that would listen patiently and never interrupt. A man walks past humming. Not a song I recognize, but it doesn't matter. It's slow and wandering, like he forgot where it started. He carries 2 buckets suspended from a pole across his shoulders, water sloshing gently with each step. The sound is oddly soothing. A moving reminder that water is still water, even when everything else feels new. Somewhere farther off, a hammer taps against wood. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. Whoever is working knows exactly how much effort to use. No rush, no wasted movement, just enough. I watch a pair of sandals placed neatly outside a doorway. No one is wearing them. They sit side by side like they're waiting for instructions. I imagine them sighing in relief, grateful to be off duty. Edo has rules, certainly. Structure, hierarchies, whole systems built around who bows to whom and how deeply. Samurai with their careful posture. Merchants with their ledgers and scales. Artisans whose hands know things their mouths don't need to explain. But beneath all of that, there's this softness. A woman pauses to adjust the sleeve of her child's kimono, smoothing the fabric like she's erasing a wrinkle in the day. The child immediately tries to undo her work by crouching to poke at something on the ground. A beetle, I think. Shiny, black, important according to the child. The beetle does not seem impressed. I smile without realizing it. I think about how Edo, despite its size, is still largely made of wood. Wood houses, wood shops, wood bridges. Even the sound of the city is wooden. A dry, polite knock rather than a sharp echo. It makes everything feel temporary, in a gentle way. Like the city knows it's borrowing time and plans to give it back politely. A gust of wind moves through and I hear paper flutter. Somewhere, a paper charm twists on its string, catching light for just a second. I wonder who hung it there, what they hoped it would protect. Fire, maybe. Illness, bad luck, or simply boredom. I understand that last one. A vendor rolls past, pushing a cart with a wheel that squeaks just enough to be noticeable. On the cart are little ceramic cups, arranged carefully. He stops nearby and rearranges them, even though they were already neat. Maybe that's part of the job. Pretending improvement is always possible. The smell of grilled fish drifts through again, stronger this time. My stomach responds with enthusiasm. Loud enthusiasm. I place a hand over it, as if that will help. It does not. A monk walks by, straw hat low over his face, sandals whispering against the ground. He holds a staff with metal rings that clink softly as he moves. The sound is rhythmic, meditative, like punctuation for the street. Clink. Step, clink. He doesn't look at anyone in particular, but it feels like he sees everything anyway. I think about time again, and then decide not to. Instead, I focus on the tree. The branches stretch overhead like careful arms. Still bare, still waiting. A few buds, tight and patient, doing their quiet work where no one can see. I realize something then. I'm not actually waiting for the blossoms anymore. I'm waiting with the tree, and that feels different. The city exhales. I breathe with it, and somewhere in the distance, a bell rings again. Not to hurry anyone, just to remind the world it's still turning. The lanterns begin to glow one by one, not all at once. That would be far too dramatic. They come alive gradually, as if the evening is politely knocking on doors and waiting to be invited in. One lantern flickers, then steadies. Another follows. Soon the street is dotted with warm squares of light, floating gently in the growing dusk. The cherry tree above me takes on a different shape in this light. The branches look softer now, less like empty lines and more like careful brush strokes. Shadows overlap and separate again, as if the tree is slowly rearranging itself for comfort. I shift my legs, stretching them out a little. The ground is cool through my trousers, but not unpleasant. There's a small stone pressing into my calf. I move it aside with my foot and immediately forget about it, which feels like a small personal victory. A group of children passes by, chasing one another in slow, looping circles. Their laughter rises and falls, not sharp or loud, just happy. One of them trips, lands on their hands, pauses, and then laughs harder than anyone else. No tears, just dust and pride. I think about how childhood must feel here. Structured, certainly. Expectations waiting like folded clothes. But still, moments like this slip through. Moments where the only rule is who's it. A shopkeeper slides a wooden panel into place, closing up for the night. He pauses to straighten it twice, stepping back each time to inspect his work. Satisfied, he nods once, deeply, as if the panel has earned his respect. Somewhere nearby, someone practices a shamisen. Not well, not badly, just carefully. The notes wander, stop, start again. A melody tries to form and then decides it's not ready. I relate to that. A woman walks past carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. As she moves, the scent of rice and something sweet trails behind her. I briefly imagine the meal waiting inside that cloth. Steam rising, bowls placed carefully, conversation unfolding without urgency. The thought settles into my chest like warmth. I glance up at the buds again. Still closed, still firm, still absolutely unconcerned with my presence. And yet, I feel strangely welcome here, like the tree doesn't mind the company, even if it has nothing special to offer yet. A moth flutters into view, drawn to the lantern light. It circles, hesitant, then commits fully, hovering just out of reach of the flame. It seems very proud of itself for finding light in the dark. I watch it longer than necessary. My thoughts drift, as they tend to do. I wonder how many people have sat under this tree, how many conversations passed beneath it, how many secrets were kept here simply because no one thought to speak them aloud. I think about all the places I've been where something important was supposed to happen and didn't, and how those places often turn out to be the ones I remember best. Nothing is happening now, and it's wonderful. The lanterns hum softly. The street settles, the city breathes in and holds and breathes out again. I sit beneath the cherry tree, wrapped in borrowed time and unimportant thoughts, and let the evening arrive exactly as it wants to. And for a little while longer, I stay. As the sky deepens into a darker blue, the street changes again. Not dramatically, just carefully. The louder sounds drift away first. The children scatter, called home by voices that don't need to shout. Shopkeepers finish counting, sliding doors closed with soft finality. Someone shakes out a mat, the dust rising briefly before settling back where it came from. I notice how many rules live here, not just written ones, but invisible ones. Where to walk, when to bow. How loud is too loud? How long is polite to linger? And yet, between all those rules, there are these little pockets of freedom, moments no one seems to regulate. A man pauses to watch the moon rise between rooftops. He stays longer than necessary, head tilted, mouth slightly open like he's forgotten he was on his way somewhere. Eventually he remembers and goes on. A woman feeds scraps to a cat behind her house, even though she pretends not to notice it waiting every evening at the same time. The cat pretends it's coincidence. I remain under my tree, comfortably irrelevant. I think about how Edo is run. The Tokugawa shogunate, holding things steady for centuries through careful control. Samurai walking streets not as warriors, but as officials. Swords worn more out of tradition than need. Peace enforced so thoroughly that boredom becomes a quiet companion, which I find oddly comforting. There's something soothing about a world where the most exciting thing happening nearby is whether tomorrow's fish will be fresh. A pair of guards walk past, talking softly. Their armor catches lantern light, dull rather than shiny. Practical. Worn. They nod to someone I can't see, acknowledged in return. Nothing suspicious, nothing urgent. One of them glances at me. Just once, not sharply. Not suspiciously, just noticing. Then he looks away. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I'm always careful not to draw attention. Blending in is an art form when you don't belong anywhere for long. Sit still. Look tired. Look like you're thinking about nothing important. It usually works. A breeze moves through the branches overhead and I hear the faintest tapping as buds brush together. Not opening, just adjusting. I find myself wondering how many seasons this tree has seen, how many winters like this, how many springs that followed, right on time, without apology. I scratch a small mark in the dirt with my finger and then smooth it away. No need to leave evidence of my thoughts. A bell rings again, farther this time. The sound carries softly, folded into the evening air like it belongs there. I think about all the clocks I've seen, all the ways people measure time, bells, shadows, water dripping, candles burning down. This place seems to measure time by habits. Dinner, Lanterns. Footsteps thinning. I shift again, settling deeper into stillness. My body understands what to do even if my mind keeps wandering. If you're listening and your thoughts are still bouncing, it's all right. They'll tire themselves out eventually. They always do. For now, you can just sit with me, under a tree that's in no hurry at all. Night doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps. It fills the small spaces first. The gaps between footsteps. The pauses between words. The moments when no one is quite sure what comes next. The lanterns glow brighter now, not because they've changed, but because everything else has dimmed around them. Their light spills onto the packed earth, turning stones into soft shapes and footprints into temporary stories. I notice how the air cools just a little more. Not enough to be uncomfortable, just enough to remind you that evening has rules of its own. I pull my cloak tighter without thinking about it. My hands disappear into the folds of fabric, warm and still. A man passes, carrying a bundle of paper umbrellas. They knock together lightly with each step, a hollow wooden sound that echoes just once before being swallowed by the night. He pauses to adjust the strap on his shoulder, stretches his neck, and continues on like the road owes him nothing. Somewhere behind me, a door slides shut. Somewhere else, another opens. Dinner smells drift through the street. Rice, miso, something fried. The scents overlap gently, like they're practicing sharing space. I think about how many dinners are happening right now. Families sitting close. Bowls placed carefully. Chopsticks resting exactly where they're meant to. And how none of them include me. It's not a lonely thought, so not really. It's more like watching warm light through a window while knowing you don't need to go inside. I shift my back against the tree again. The trunk holds steady, completely reliable. I imagine the roots below me, stretching deep into the ground, ignoring politics, taxes, and travel permits entirely. A breeze moves through and carries the sound of distant water. A canal, maybe, or a wooden wheel turning slowly, lifting water where it's needed. The rhythm is slow enough that I stop trying to count it. A stray dog wanders into view, pauses near the lantern light, and scratches behind its ear with exaggerated focus. It looks around, embarrassed to be observed, then pretends it was stretching all along. I smile to myself. Two older men walk by talking about rice yields. Not loudly, not urgently. Just exchanging facts the way people do when they've known each other long enough to stop decorating their words. One of them gestures with his hands, explaining a point that seems to require very little explanation. They nod. Agree, disagree slightly. Continue. This era is full of systems, but it's also full of routines that hold people together quietly. Shared concerns, familiar complaints, the comfort of knowing tomorrow will probably look a lot like today. There's peace in that. I lean my head back and look up through the branches. The sky's darker now, but not empty. A few stars appear, faint and careful as if they're not sure they're allowed to be seen yet. The buds above me are still closed, still patient, still not impressed by the passage of time. I think about how often people rush toward moments they think will be important, how they count down days and seasons and events, and how the waiting itself often becomes the most vivid part. If you're listening and you feel yourself sinking a little deeper, that's fine. You don't need to hold on to every word. You can let them drift past like lantern light through branches. I'm still here. The city hums softly, and the night settles in, exactly as it should. There's a moment in the night when things get very quiet. Not silent, just thin. Like the world has taken off its heavy coat and is standing there in its shirt sleeves, not quite sure what to do with its hands. The street empties a little more. Not completely. It never does. Edo doesn't really sleep so much as it changes posture. The people who remain walk slower, their voices soften. Even the lantern light seems to relax, stretching its glow farther now that it doesn't have to compete. I listen. At first, I think I'm not hearing anything at all, and then, slowly, sounds begin to separate themselves. A distant cough, the creak of wood cooling, footsteps far enough away that they're more suggestion than fact. Somewhere, a pot lid settles with a soft metallic click, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Somewhere else, water is poured carefully, not to waste a drop. I realize I've been sitting very still, so still that my body feels like it's gently fading into the background, like I'm becoming part of the tree's shadow rather than a separate thing. My shoulders loosen, my jaw unclenches. I hadn't noticed it was tight. The buds above me make no sound at all, which feels appropriate. I think about the people sleeping now, rolled into futons, heads turned toward walls, breath slow and steady, dreams drifting in and out like shy visitors. I think about the people still awake, writing, thinking, worrying gently, finishing one last task they promised themselves they'd do before resting. And then there's me, not sleeping, not working, just being. A cat appears again, or maybe it's a different one. Cats are very casual about identity. It steps into the lantern light, pauses, and looks up at the tree like it's considering climbing. After a moment, it decides against it and sits instead, tail wrapped neatly around its feet. We sit together, not interacting, not ignoring each other, just sharing space. A breeze passes through, cool and light, and I feel it brush my cheek. It carries the faint scent of river water now, darker and heavier than before. Somewhere nearby, a small water wheel turns with a low wooden groan, repeating itself patiently. The night deepens another shade. I tilt my head slightly, resting it back against the trunk. The wood is cool through my cloak. Solid. Reliable. Completely unconcerned with where I came from or where I'll go next. If you're listening and you've started to drift, that's okay. You don't have to follow every sound. You don't have to remember every detail. You can let the night do some of the work for you. I'll stay here a while longer, under a cherry tree that hasn't bloomed yet, listening to the sound of almost nothing. The night keeps thinning out, not disappearing, just spacing itself farther apart. A few figures move down the street, but they walk with purpose now. Not hurried, just certain. These are people who know exactly where they're going and why they're still awake. The rest have already folded themselves into sleep. Two men pass carrying a lantern between them. The lantern swings slightly, casting long shadows that stretch and then pull themselves back in. They speak quietly, heads close together, the way people do when they don't want their thoughts to echo. One of them laughs, just once. A short sound. It surprises both of them, I think, because they immediately grow quieter afterward, like they've remembered the rules of night. I watch them go. Edo is good at this, knowing when to stop. Shops close when they should. Streets empty when they're meant to. Even conversations seem to wind themselves down naturally, without needing a signal. I think about how rare that is. In so many places, people cling to moments long after they've finished. They keep talking because silence feels like a decision. They stay because leaving feels like loss. Here, leaving feels like part of the design. A woman steps out of a doorway and carefully hangs a small cloth sign inside instead of outside. Closed now. Tomorrow will come whether she's ready or not. She bows slightly to no one in particular, slides the door shut, and the street accepts it without complaint. The cat beside me stands, stretches, and walks off without ceremony. No goodbye, no explanation, Just done. I admire that. A faint breeze rattles a bamboo chime somewhere nearby. The sound is soft and hollow, like the night clearing its throat. It happens once, then not again. I shift my legs, easing a small stiffness out of my knees. The ground has grown colder, but not unkindly so. Just honest. I notice my breathing has slowed. I didn't plan that. It just happened. If you're listening and your thoughts have started to drift into half ideas, unfinished pictures, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to hold on to them. They're allowed to leave, too. I look up at the branches again, still bare, still waiting. And I realize something gentle and a little amusing. If I had arrived in spring, if the blossoms were already here, I probably would have stayed a few minutes, admired them, and moved on. But because there's nothing to see, I stayed. And because I stayed, I saw everything else. The people who know when to leave, the city learning how to rest, the quiet between moments doing its quiet work. The tree doesn't bloom, the night doesn't rush, and for now, neither do I. There comes a point when the city stops talking to itself. Not abruptly, not with a final word, it just lowers its voice. The lanterns remain, steady and patient, but fewer people pass beneath them now. The street feels wider somehow, as if space itself has stretched out now that it's no longer being shared so actively. I notice sounds carrying farther. A single footstep echoes longer than it did before. A door sliding shut sounds like a statement instead of a suggestion. Even the wind seems more deliberate, brushing along the rooftops and through the branches above me as though it's double-checking its work. The cherry tree creaks softly. Not in complaint, just in acknowledgement of the temperature shift. Wood adjusting to night. I pull my cloak a little tighter again and settle deeper into stillness. The fabric smells faintly of places I've been before. Old smoke. Cold air. Time that didn't ask permission. Somewhere down the street, a watchman walks his route, tapping a wooden clapper together at measured intervals. The sound is slow, reassuring. Proof that someone is awake so others don't have to be. I imagine him passing the same doors every night, seeing the same shadows, measuring the hours not by numbers, but by familiarity. Tap. Pause. Tap. The sound fades. A moth flutters too close to a lantern and darts away again, startled but unharmed. It disappears into the dark, satisfied with its experiment. I think about how many small decisions fill a single day. When to walk, when to stop, when to speak, when to let silence finish the thought for you. This place seems very good at letting silence do its job. I glance at the street one more time, empty now except for a forgotten crate near a doorway and a broom leaned carefully against a wall. Someone will remember it in the morning, or they won't. Either way, the night doesn't mind. My breathing is slow now. Even. The kind of breathing you don't have to supervise. If you're listening and you feel like you're floating just a little, that gentle weightlessness where thoughts blur at the edges, you don't need to correct it. You're exactly where you're meant to be. I remain beneath the tree. The city whispers, and the night finally feels complete. At some point, I realize I'm not waiting for spring anymore. I'm just sitting, which is, honestly, one of my better skills. It's quiet enough now that I can hear the tiniest things, the little whisper of my cloak shifting when I breathe, the soft click of a lantern's paper skin as the wind nudges it, the way the packed earth seems to settle under its own weight, like it's relaxing after holding everybody up all day. And because it's quiet, my mind starts doing what it always does. It starts collecting things, not big dramatic things, just small ones. Like the fact that the lanterns here aren't just decoration, they're practical. They're a kind of agreement between people and night. We'll put a little light here. We'll keep the street gentle. We'll acknowledge the dark without fighting it. I look down the lane and see the warm squares of light along the wooden buildings. Some are brighter than others, depending on how fresh the oil is, how clean the paper is, how recently someone trimmed the wick. It makes me think of how every era has its own version of maintenance. In my own time, people maintained batteries. Here, they maintain flame. Same idea, different smell. If you've never smelled an old lantern, it has this faint oil and paper scent that makes you think of libraries and workshops and places where hands are always doing something quiet, even at night. I shift my shoulders and let them sink. I can feel the tree behind me, steady, almost heavy in a comforting way. Like the tree is saying, I've been here the whole time and I'm not leaving, so you might as well stop fidgeting, which I try to respect. Down the street, something moves. Not a person. Smaller. A chicken. A single chicken, wandering into the lane as if it's forgotten what time it is. It pauses in a patch of lantern light, looks around with a level of seriousness I don't think I'll ever achieve, and then pecks at the ground once. It pecks again. Then it turns its head sharply, as if it has heard something important. It hasn't. It's a chicken, but it seems satisfied anyway. It strolls toward a doorway and vanishes behind a low fence like it has a scheduled appointment. Somewhere, I hear a soft cluck, very pleased with itself. I don't know why that comforts me. Maybe because it's proof that even in a highly structured society, permits and checkpoints and all, there is still a chicken out here doing whatever it wants. Honestly, that's inspiring. My mind drifts again. Edo isn't just a city, it's a system. You can feel it in the layout, even from here. The way streets flow, the way doors face certain directions, the way houses cluster, the way people move like they're following invisible lines. This era is Tokugawa peace. Long peace. Centuries of relative stability, and peace does funny things. It makes people good at art. It makes people good at crafts. It makes people extremely good at arguing about rice. It also makes boredom a legitimate presence. Not the miserable kind, the steady kind. The kind of boredom that lets you notice the texture of a wooden beam, the way paper slides in a door frame, the little patterns of smoke that curl from a cooking fire. Sometimes, I think peace is just a lot of quiet time to look at details, which is exactly what I'm doing. I blink slowly and watch the lantern light tremble across the stones. Somewhere farther away, I hear the soft clack of a night watchman's wooden clappers again. It's faint, but it carries. Clack, clack. A pause. Clack, clack. Like someone counting time without numbers. I've always found that soothing. Numbers can be bossy. Sounds are gentler. I remember a different place, another time, where time was counted with dripping water, a little basin, a steady, patient drip that didn't care what anyone wanted. I sat there once and tried to guess the interval between drops. I did not succeed. I did, however, fall asleep sitting up. So, that was a win. My eyes drift to the buds on the cherry tree again. Still closed, still stubborn. I wonder what kind of cherry tree this is. There are so many varieties, and people here are very serious about trees. They name things carefully. They cultivate beauty intentionally. They appreciate fleeting seasons like they're a form of wisdom. Hanami, blossom viewing, will come later. People will gather under trees like this with food and drink and friends. They'll sit on mats. They'll laugh softly and point at petals and pretend they aren't thinking about impermanence. But everyone will be. Because blossoms are a gentle reminder. Beautiful, brief, not negotiable. That's the thing about cherry blossoms. They are the world's softest deadline. And right now, in the not spring, the deadline hasn't arrived yet, which means I'm sitting under the promise of something, a promise I can't cash in yet, and somehow that makes it calmer. I look down at my hands, tucked into my cloak. I rub my thumb against my fingers, feeling the fabric, the seam, the little roughness where the weave catches. If you're listening, and you're still awake, you can let your hands rest too. No need to hold tension, no need to grip the day. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw loosen, let your thoughts wander the way mine do. Slowly and without urgency. A faint scuffing sound draws my attention. A man in simple clothing is sweeping the street. At this hour, he moves slowly, broom bristles whispering across the ground. He's not cleaning because he expects company. He's cleaning because that's what he does. Because cleanliness is part of order. Because order is part of peace. Because peace is the biggest luxury in the world. He sweeps in long strokes, then shorter ones, then pauses to adjust the broom like it's a delicate instrument. He notices me, briefly. He doesn't stare. He gives the smallest nod as if to say, "Yes, you are also here, and that is fine." Then he continues. I watch him for a while. There's something hypnotic about repetitive work, the sound of bristles, the rhythm of movement, the way the swept area becomes slightly smoother, slightly more defined, like he's giving the street a bedtime story. If I had to pick an emblem for this era, it might be that broom. Not flashy, not heroic, just steady, and honestly, that's comforting. A soft sound again. A door sliding open. A woman steps out carrying a bucket, pours something into a gutter channel, and goes back inside. The door closes. No fuss, no lingering. Like the night is a room everyone shares, and you don't want to slam anything. I find myself thinking about how different this is from some other places I've been. In some times, night is loud. In others, it's dangerous. In others, it's filled with machines and engines and neon that refuses to dim. Here, night is allowed to be night, and people seem to cooperate. I hear a faint rustle above me. I look up and see a small bird tucked into the branches. It's rounder than it was earlier, feathers puffed out for warmth, eyes half closed. It's so still that at first it looks like a leaf. Then it blinks. It looks down at me, and for a moment we have a quiet agreement. We are both just trying to exist comfortably. The bird turns its head, tucks its beak into its feathers, and resumes being a tiny, living ornament. I smile. My thoughts drift again. I think about printing, woodblock prints, ukiyo-e. People carve designs into wood, ink them, press paper to them. They create images that travel farther than the artist ever will. Actors, landscapes, waves, mountains, city scenes, quiet moments that become collectible. It's funny, because in this era, you can hold a picture of a place you've never been. And yet, travel itself is restricted, controlled, measured. In some ways, art becomes the loophole. A print can go where the person cannot. I imagine someone, somewhere, owning a print of cherry blossoms, hanging it on their wall, looking at blossoms even when it isn't spring. And I think, maybe that's what I'm doing right now. I came for blossoms. I got everything else. The smell of wood smoke, the sound of lanterns, the quiet patience of people, the chicken, the broom, the bird. All of it feels like a picture. Like something I'll carry with me, even if I leave before the tree ever blooms. A faint laugh echoes far down the street. Someone inside a house, amused by something. It's muffled by walls and paper screens, softened into a gentle blur. Then silence again. Not an empty silence, a full one. I lean my head back against the tree and let my eyes half close. If you're listening, and you want to close your eyes now, you can. You don't have to watch the street. I'll watch it for you. Nothing is going to happen quickly. Nothing is going to demand anything, just warm light, cool air, a city resting, a tree waiting, and me doing the very difficult work of sitting here and not rushing the universe. Which, if we're being honest, is probably the best advice I have. I don't know exactly when I decide to stay longer. There isn't a clear moment where the thought forms and announces itself. No quiet declaration, no inner voice saying, "Now we remain." It's more like the idea of leaving simply dissolves, and nothing rushes in to replace it. The night has settled into its deepest shape now. The lanterns burn steadily, no longer flickering, as if they've accepted their task and intend to see it through until morning. The street is nearly empty. Even the watchman's clapper has faded into distance, folded gently into the far edges of the city. I notice how still my body feels. Not stiff, not heavy, just placed. My back rests against the tree in a way that feels oddly deliberate, like this exact curve of bark was waiting. The ground beneath me is cold now, but the cold has softened. It's no longer something to resist. It's just another quiet fact of the night, like gravity, like time. I listen again. There's a low, continuous sound now, barely noticeable unless you let everything else fall away. The city's smallest hum, maybe water moving somewhere underground, maybe wood contracting as it cools, maybe 100 tiny sounds overlapping until they blur into one. It's the kind of sound you notice only when you stop trying to notice anything at all. I think about all the places where I meant to stay briefly and ended up lingering. Not because I was delayed, not because I was uncertain, just because there was no reason to hurry. Those moments rarely announce themselves as important. They don't arrive with meaning attached. Meaning tends to drift in later, quietly, after the moment has already passed. I look up at the cherry tree again. Still bare. Still holding whatever it's holding. I imagine this place weeks from now. Petals loosening and falling. People gathering beneath branches just like these, laying out cloths, unpacking food, talking softly while pretending not to watch the blossoms too closely. Because if you watch them too closely, you start counting. And counting changes the feeling of things. I wonder if someone will sit exactly where I'm sitting now, if they'll lean against this trunk and think, without quite knowing why, that this feels like a good place to pause. I hope they do. The street remains quiet. A figure crosses briefly through lantern light. Someone late, or early, or simply moving through. Their footsteps are careful, as if they don't want to disturb the ground. Then the space settles again. I let my eyes soften, not closing them, just loosening focus. The lanterns blur slightly at the edges. The shadows stretch and ease back into place. The air feels clean, cold, honest. I think about how strange it is that I travel through time, and yet so many of the moments that stay with me are the ones where nothing especially happens. No grand event, no famous name, no turning point anyone will mark. Just a person, under a tree, staying a little longer than expected. The cherry tree doesn't bloom. The city doesn't stir. The night doesn't ask anything. And so I remain where I am, breathing slowly, letting time pass without measuring it, sitting beneath a tree in a season that hasn't quite decided what it will become. The moment continues. Quietly. Exactly as it should. There's a stretch of night that doesn't really belong to anything. It's not evening anymore. But it isn't morning either. It's the part in between. The hours that don't announce themselves with bells or birds or people waking up and deciding things. Time moves through this stretch quietly, as if it doesn't want credit for passing. I notice the sky has shifted just slightly. Still dark, but no longer the same dark it was before. There's a softness to it now, like the ink has been diluted with a careful hand. The stars look less sharp, more tentative. I stay where I am. The tree hasn't changed. The buds are still closed, still firm, still holding whatever knowledge they have about when to open. The bark beneath my shoulder feels cooler now, almost smooth where the cold has settled into it. The lanterns continue their work. Some of them have dimmed just a little, the oil lowering imperceptibly. Others glow steady and bright, tended by someone earlier who took the extra moment to trim the wick just right. I think about that person, about how they probably didn't consider it an important task, just part of the evening, something you do because you've always done it, because someone taught you how. Those little acts carry farther than anyone realizes. A sound drifts in from somewhere beyond the street. Not close, not far. Roosters. Not calling yet, just shifting, murmuring to themselves like they're checking the time internally, testing the edges of the coming day without committing to it. I smile at that. Even animals know not to rush this part. A faint mist begins to gather near the ground. It clings low, slipping between stones, catching briefly in the lantern light before drifting on. It makes the street look softer, like the village is being gently erased and redrawn at the same time. I rub my hands together once beneath my cloak, slow and deliberate. The motion feels louder than it is. Everything feels louder in this thin quiet. Somewhere nearby, a door opens just enough to let out a sliver of lamplight. A woman steps out, wraps her robe tighter, and sets something small on the doorstep. A bundle, a bowl. I can't quite tell. She pauses, listens to the night, then retreats inside again. The door slides shut. The light disappears. The street accepts it. I think about how many mornings begin like this, without ceremony, without witnesses, just small preparations unfolding quietly, so that when the day arrives, as it feels like it was always meant to. I shift slightly, easing my legs, careful not to disturb the space too much. The gravel presses faintly through the fabric of my trousers. Not uncomfortable, just present. A cat reappears near the end of the street. Possibly the same one, possibly not. It walks with unhurried confidence, pauses to groom one paw, then sits and stares into nothing at all. I respect that. The breeze returns, lighter now. It moves through the branches overhead, and I hear the faintest brushing sound as buds touch, separate, touch again. Still closed, still waiting. I realize I'm not thinking about blossoms anymore. Not really. I'm thinking about this exact hour, this unclaimed slice of time that most people sleep through, and the few who don't move gently, like guests who don't want to wake the house. I've always liked these hours best. They don't demand plans. They don't expect productivity. They don't ask who you are or where you're going. They let you exist without explanation. If you're listening, this is usually where thoughts begin to loosen their grip, where ideas stop forming complete sentences, where the mind starts arranging things into shapes instead of words. That's fine. Nothing important needs to be decided right now. The lanterns glow, the mist drifts, the city breathes, and I remain under the cherry tree, sharing this quiet hour with a place that has learned, very well, how to wait. The first real change comes quietly, not as light, not as sound, just a feeling that something has finished resting. The mist along the ground begins to thin, lifting in slow, uneven strands, like it's remembering somewhere else it needs to be. The lanterns still glow, but their warmth feels less necessary now, less central, as if the night has decided it's done being in charge. The sky has shifted again. Not brighter exactly, just less heavy. The dark loosens its grip, becoming a softer shade, the kind that knows it won't last much longer and doesn't mind. I stay where I am. The cherry tree is unchanged. The buds remain closed, patient to the very end. No last-minute surprise. No dramatic gesture, just consistency. I respect that. Somewhere far off, a rooster finally commits to its opinion. One clear call, followed by another farther away, less confident, as if checking whether this is truly the right moment. It is. The street is still empty. Doors remain closed. The village holds its breath just a little longer, suspended between night and morning. I take a slow breath in. The air smells different now. Cooler, cleaner, like the day is being prepared somewhere just out of sight. I think about how often endings are mistaken for beginnings, and how often beginnings are quieter than anyone expects. I've been sitting here for a long time, long enough that the tree feels familiar, long enough that the street feels like it knows me, long enough that leaving doesn't feel abrupt, just appropriate. That's when I notice it. Not a sound at first. A warmth, gentle, localized, resting in my palm like it's always been there, and I simply forgot to check. The smooth stone. It hums softly now, not loudly, not urgently, just enough to be noticed. The vibration is steady, calm, as if it has been waiting for the night to finish saying what it needed to say. A faint glow follows, muted and warm, reflecting softly against my fingers and the inside of my cloak. I look at it for a moment, not with surprise, with recognition. The tree doesn't react. The street doesn't stir. Even the lanterns seem unconcerned, continuing their quiet work as if this sort of thing happens all the time. I rise slowly, joints protesting just a little, then settling. I brush a bit of dust from my cloak, more out of habit than necessity. The spot beneath the tree looks exactly the same as it did before I stood. No sign I was ever there. That feels right. I place one hand against the trunk of the cherry tree. Just briefly. The bark is cool, solid, indifferent in the best possible way. Still no blossoms. I wouldn't have wanted them now anyway. The stone's hum deepens slightly, not louder, just fuller. The glow brightens, contained, patient. The village begins to wake at its edges. A door slides open somewhere, a footstep, a voice clearing its throat. Morning is on its way. I close my fingers around the stone. The street softens. The lantern light stretches and blurs. The outlines of rooftops and branches loosen, as if the world is gently releasing me. The last thing I see is the cherry tree, unchanged, steady, waiting for its own moment to arrive. Then the light steadies, the hum carries me, and the village fades, not away, but onward, continuing without me, exactly as it should. Another quiet place, another unremarkable stretch of time, another moment that didn't ask to be remembered, and will be anyway. I go calmly, unhurried, already certain that somewhere, sometime, there will be another place just like this, where nothing much happens, and that makes it perfect.